Hello, everyone, and welcome to Exploring Your Data Using NRQL, or you'll hear me refer to it as NRQL. This is a continuation of the fundamentals track. We'll be picking up where we left off in the previous session. If you were not in that session, that's okay. You'll be able to follow along. I'll get into the details in just a minute. We're going to give it some time for people to join. We've got about half the folks that were on the previous session, so I'm just going to give it a couple of minutes for people to join so that everyone can follow along. Feel free to say hello in the chat. Let me know where you're joining us from, what part of the world, what part of the country. And by the way, for the most part, I'll be talking to the screen, but when I'm checking the chat, I'll be looking off to the side. So sorry to give you the side of my face half the time, but I'll have to check the chat over here. Oh, hello from Milwaukee. Awesome. Alan's got a nice welcome message in there. Memphis, Tennessee. Hey, Jemiah. Ooh, Toronto, Canada. Indiana. Welcome, everyone. For those of you who just joined, I'm just giving it a couple of minutes for people to join. We had roughly 75 people in the previous session, so we've got about half that here now. So I just want to give it a few minutes for people to get here so that they're not lost in following along. Portland, Oregon. Jemiah doesn't count because I know you're from Atlanta. But welcome from Portland. Phil's back too. Hey, Phil.
Congratulations to you Atlanta people for the World Series victory.
I can't even pretend to be, I'm a fair weather fan, so I can't even pretend like I'm excited.
Well, it's fair weather, so you should be happy.
That's true. That's true. That's a good point. That's a good point. Ooh, we got Rick from the Netherlands. Awesome. Awesome. Welcome. Welcome. Okay, so I've got 2 minutes after the hour. We're going to go ahead and get started. I still only see about a little more than half of who we had here previously, but let's go ahead and jump into it. So first, I just want to repeat some of the things that Phil said earlier. So all the sessions that we're doing in the fundamentals track today are going to build on one another. And as Phil previewed in the previous session, we're going to start to talk about NRQL or NRQL, which is how you can start to look at the data that you've got reporting into your New Relic account. So if you weren't able to actually follow along, if you did not set up an account and create the Glitch app and start reporting data under your own account in the last session, you can use our, put these credentials in the chat again. You can use our training account to follow along with the labs today. Give me a second to paste this in the chat. So the URL is one.newrelic.com. The email address is learn@newrelicuniversity.com, and the password, I don't know who came up with it, is citrus geologist. I would say it was randomly generated, but that's a little bit too specific to be randomly generated.
That would be me. So I used a random passphrase generator, but then I picked two words that were randomly generated to come up with this.
Okay. Now I know who the culprit is. All right. So, well, wait a minute, Phil, you didn't even remember the password in the last session. So it
was randomly generated.
Okay, gotcha.
I generated it. I told you guys about it, and then I forgot.
That's fair. That's fair. So again, if you weren't able to get data reporting into your account during the last session, or if you weren't able to join the previous session and you're just now joining us for this session, you can follow along with the labs using the email and password that I've now copied into the chat. So let's get started. Just a little bit of a prerequisite, just talking about what we're going to be looking at. So again, I'm going to try to stop referring back to the previous session just in case there are folks here who weren't able to attend that session. When you're reporting data to New Relic, and you'll see on the slide into NRDB, which is the New Relic database, when you're reporting your telemetry data into New Relic, there's lots of different information that you're reporting in. And again, if you've spun up the account, you probably saw that. But something that you'll hear us say a lot of times, and you may have heard it in some of the other sessions today, if you attend any of the New Relic University sessions, you'll hear us talk about MELT data, which stands for metrics, events, logs, and traces. So that's the telemetry data that you have reporting into New Relic, depending on the agents that you configure the data that's going to be reporting in. So for example, in the previous session, when Phil was doing the infrastructure, when he was showing you guys the guided install, remember it asked him whether or not he wanted to start reporting log data. So if he had said no, then you wouldn't necessarily have log data. For the purposes of this session, where we're going to start talking about how you can start to query that data, we're going to focus on event data. And so there's a couple of different event types that we're going to be looking at today. So as an example, so transaction, I can't remember. I know you did a quick, oh, you did page view. I was going to say, I remember you did a quick query in the last session, Phil. It was for page view data. But we've got a couple of different event types that if you're querying just transaction, or if you're querying data in New Relic, you can, if you're looking at browser data, you might be looking at page view. So for example, again, the glitch app we were looking at, we were wanting to look to see whether or not we were getting page view data in. If you're looking at application or APM data, you're going to be querying a transaction event type. Let me stop for a second and say that these are not the only event types. These are just some samples. If you're looking at synthetic data, we're going to be doing synthetics later in the day. Then you might be querying this transaction or event type of synthetic check. Mobile data, mobile requests, infrastructure. System sample is one example. If you're querying infrastructure data, you're going to see process sample or container sample, or anything that ends with sample is probably an infrastructure data type. So those are just examples of some of the event types that you might query. Today, we're going to primarily be looking at transaction data from our APM agent that we got reporting in the last session, as well as browser data, which or page view data, which is coming from the browser app. But while I'm on this slide, let's talk a little bit about NRQL syntax, or NRQL syntax, which stands for New Relic Query Language. So this is our proprietary query language, but it's very similar. It's similar enough to SQL that you'll, if you currently know how to write queries in SQL, you'll be able to get started pretty quickly. It's different enough that it'll frustrate you when you're trying to do something very specific that is SQL specific that we don't do. So it's a blessing and a curse in terms of it being similar to SQL. But you'll see from the slide that, generally what we're looking at is a select from and then a where, or for in NRQL, it's a facet clause as opposed to group by. So again, if you know SQL, then you know group by is the way that you can aggregate your, group your data. But in NRQL, it's facet. Again, there's other differences, but for the purposes of today's session, we're going to go over just some basic things. So this is what the NRQL syntax looks like. So what we're going to be doing today is we're going to create a dashboard to start reporting data from the app, that our glitch, our FoodMe app, onto, we're going to put together a dashboard to start looking at some of the performance data that we've got coming into New Relic. So I'm going to get you started by creating a dashboard really quick. Actually, I was going to say, before I do that, let me show you. Here's what I want to do. I'm going to show you a sample dashboard. And this is one I was going to talk about later. You might have a dashboard where you're just looking at what your statistics, what your AppDex is an industry standard for measuring user satisfaction. So maybe you're looking at your front end and your back end AppDex score to see how your application is performing. Or you might want to keep track of some database queries. This is just, I'm just throwing this out here as an example of a dashboard that you might put together just to track some of the performance, or your page load time, your DOM and rendering performance. It's just an example of something that you might put together to start to look at the data that's reporting into your account. So we're going to get started. I'm going to get you started with creating a quick dashboard, because I've got several labs that I'm going to have you guys go through. So I want to save as much time as possible with labs. I don't want to spend a whole lot of time on well, that's interesting. Sorry. Apologies for that. I don't know what happened there. I don't want to spend a whole lot of time on slides. I want to get you straight in there. So if you're in your account, I am in the New Relic University training account, which you'll see actually. Hey, Phil, did you, I see the APM. I think I saw the APM data out here. So we still have Phil's Data Nerd Days FoodMe app that's out there for APM. And we're going to be, again, APM data is going to come from the transaction event type. browser data, which we still need to solve that problem, but that's okay. We've got another FoodMe app that we can look at for browser data, as well as if necessary, I can switch to my personal account and we can take a look at some data there. But so if you're in your New Relic account, you're on the home page, you're probably looking at the Explorer. It may or may not look exactly like this. There's this collapsible section over here to the left. So if it looks like that, then it's the same screen. It's just a little bit, there's just a modal window there. What I want you to do is I want you to head over to dashboards. So that's right here up at the top. Now, if you're in your own account, then, assuming that you've only got access to a single account, then you won't have a drop down up here. If you're in an account that has, or if your login has access to multiple accounts, then there's a drop down where you can select different accounts. If you're following along with me because you're not able to do it in your own account, I want you to make sure that you select the NRU training account, because we want you to create the dashboards in this account. Plus, you don't have access, you won't have permissions in some of those other accounts that you may be able to see with that same login ID. You won't have permissions to do some of the things that we're going to do for the labs today. So if you're following along, make sure, and you're in the learn@newrelicuniversity.com account, make sure you select the New Relic University training account. And by the way, I forgot that I'm not watching the chat. So hopefully Phil will be watching the chat. I don't see any questions over there just yet. All right, so once you get to the dashboard screen, I want you to look for this create dashboard button up there in the upper right hand corner, and you're going to click on create dashboard. And the browse pre-built dashboards, this has to do with our quick starts. We've got a lot of different mechanisms that try to get you up and running sooner rather than later. It's similar to what Phil showed you earlier with the guided install. You can install some pre-built dashboards. So think of it, I like to think of it as, let's just say you were writing a resume and you're going into Word. It's the difference between starting with a blank piece of paper or starting with a resume template, where you don't have to do all the formatting and all the layout, and you can just go fill in the words that you need. So our quick starts will allow you to be able to get up and running with some pretty sophisticated dashboards pretty quickly. But for the purposes of today's lesson, we're going to create one from scratch. So we're going to click on create new dashboard, and we're going to give it a name. I'm going to call it the RLF Data Nerd Base. Oops, can't type. Dashboard. If you're in your own account, you can call it whatever you like. If you are in my account, if you're in the Learn at New Relic University account, I ask that it be family friendly, but also that you put your initials at the beginning, because as we start to add some widgets to the dashboard, you want to be able to find your specific dashboard. So if you're working in a communal account, you want to make sure that you can find the components that you built. So put your initials at the front and then name it something very family friendly. And it should default if you selected the NRU training up front, training account up front, then it should default to that. But if you don't see that selected, then you can click on the drop down and then choose the NRU training account. And then once you're there, I want you to click on create. Okay, so that's going to give you, this is again back to my Microsoft Word analogy. It's going to give you a blank piece of, this is your blank page. The first time you create the dashboard, you'll see everywhere my mouse goes, I got this little, it's like add a chart, where where do you want to put it? Where do you want to put it? That's going to change after I put the first widget onto my dashboard. So I'm going to do this first part for you, and then I'm going to give you guys a lab so that you can start to build some things. So I'm going to click on add a chart. I'm actually not going to add a chart this first time. I'm just going to, because I just want to show you what changes after you add your first ever widget to your dashboard. I'm going to add some text. So I'm just going to call this, it's thinking, I'm going to call this Rachel's Awesome Dashboard. I'm the worst typist in the world, so I'm sort of slow. Actually, let's make that a heading. Let's do that. Maybe not. Actually, I'm going to do this. I'm going to make this Data Nerd Days 2.0. And I can get rid of the rest of this. We'll leave the logo. I'm fine with the logo. All right, this is not important. I just wanted to create a, why is that a bullet? I don't need that to be a bullet. I just wanted to create a widget really quickly because I wanted to show you that once you create the widget, now everywhere I move my mouse, I don't see that little plus sign anymore. So it's like, wait, so now how do I add more things to my dashboard? So after you've added your first widget to a dashboard, then the way that you're going to do it is you're going to come up here to the little plus sign where it says add a dashboard in the upper right-hand corner or add to your dashboard. And then you can click on add a chart. And this is going to take you into your where you can start to type your NRQL statements. So before we get to that, let's come back over here to my slides. All right, so we did this. We've already done created the dashboard, and now we're going to write some queries. So I'm going to give you a lab. I'm going to give you some time. So we've already created the dashboard. We've done step 1 here where we've named it something. And again, in the lab, we suggest that you put your initials in there, maybe Food Me dashboard. For example, mine could have been an RLF Food Me dashboard. But again, if you're in your own account, you can call it whatever you like. And just make sure if you're in our account, you use the first couple of letters of your name or your initials. So the next thing that I want you to do is you're in the add a chart. So you should have been here. And you should see something that looks like this. And it's going to try to start you off with, okay, select. So what next? So keep in mind just the basic syntax I showed you. I just want you to type a few queries. And I'm just going to give you, I know it says 5 minutes on the slide, but since we've already gone through step number 1, how about we do maybe 3 minutes to just type a few queries. Select star from transaction and run that and see what you get. And then try select star from page view and run that and see what you get. So I'm just going to give you just a few minutes to practice just typing in that screen, and then I'll show you what it should look like, and then we'll continue with some more information about writing the NRQL and using functions and aggregates and things like that. So with that, I'm going to give you guys just a couple minutes to work on that, just to run a few queries. And if you have any questions, how can I add both queries at the same time? Well, there's a way to add a query. So how about Theo, I'll answer that question. Theo, I'll answer that question when I show you how to, I'm just gonna give it another minute for folks to just practice, and then I'll answer that question by showing you in the screen. I just don't want to switch from the lab just yet. Yeah, Pet Clinic is one. That's one of we do. So Phil and I are instructors for New Relic University, and we do lots of different training sessions. And Pet Clinic is one of the several of our training sessions that we do. We use Pet Clinic app, which is something that we built for New Relic University. But and we've got, you see Food Me. You're going to see Food Me out there too. But specifically for today's sessions, we're working on the Glitch Food Me app. Just so that you guys could follow along. All right, I think it's been 2 minutes. So let's again, so we were just doing just a couple of simple things like select star from transaction. By the way, you'll see it's trying to help you out context in autocomplete, and you start typing and it's going to show you. So it's TR, that's going to narrow it down. You can use your arrow keys up and down to choose, and then you can hit the tab key to select the thing that you want. If you hit, well, it used to be that if you hit enter, then it actually tried to run it when your query was incomplete. I think the last time I tried that, it went in a session, it actually worked. It actually just selected it instead of ran it. So I don't know if I might have been in a different account where I don't know if the settings were different, but just the tab is going to be the safest thing. So you can hit enter or you can hit run. And so select star is just going to give you everything. So you can just go see, okay, well, these are all of the attributes that I've got reporting in that particular event type. So this is just a bunch of information that's in the transaction data store. So that's one thing. Now, so back to the question. Oh, so we were doing select star from transaction, but also select star from page view. Again, this is just a simple query. So first of all, if you wanted to put that onto your dashboard, you would click save. So let's just do that for a second. It's not technically part of the lab, but I just want to show this because I want to get to Teal's question. Let's go back and let's add another query or another chart. So there was another question. So let's see, select star from, in fact, I don't remember which one I added a minute ago. But now the question was, let's run that. How do you do both at the same time? I think was the original question, both queries at the same time. In this particular version of running queries, the answer is you can't. However, I want to show you something else. This is sort of a little bit off topic, but I want to answer the question, or off topic from the agenda, but I want to answer the question more fully. So I'm going to cancel out of here. If I were to go up here, up at the top of the screen, you should see query your data. Might be easier to see it this way. It's a little icon that looks like a sort of a prompt. And then if your screen is wide enough, it says query your data. Oh, by the way, speaking of screen being wide, I changed my display settings so that you guys could see everything. But if it's too small, let me know. I could zoom in, but also remember there's a maximize screen in the, or maximize button in the lower right hand of the corner of Hopin. So if you want to make it bigger. But if you go up here to query your data, I'm getting to a point, I promise. And let's do the select star from transaction again and run that. There is a button that's here that you don't see, and it's not going to work for select star. I'm going to do a different, I'll show you this again, Tio, with a different query. But there's another button that says add another query. So you can't do it for a select star because that's just basically a data dump. But let's just say, and this is actually the next thing that I was going to cover. Let's say I was selecting the average duration. I'm jumping a little bit ahead, but so let's say I was going to select the average duration from transaction. I need something that's a time series. Oh, I have to get really sophisticated here. Not really sophisticated, but let's see. What could I do? What could I do? Average duration since.
Hey, Rachel.
Yes.
I posted a link in the chat to the documentation on how to do multiple queries. So if folks just want to go read that in the docs, it'll save some time.
That's perfect. Because I was thinking, I'm like, this is going to get really sophisticated, and that wasn't planned. So yes, thank you, Phil.
It has to be a time series. That's the thing, though. They have both queries have to do time series, which is a line chart. So that's why she was hunting for a specific type of query.
Exactly. I was literally like writing it off the top of my head. So thank you for that, Phil. So there is a link in the chat. But so if you had two time series, you could theoretically have two lines on the chart at the same time, looking at the same period of time. But again, that wasn't a query that I had prepped. So I was trying to do that off the top of my head really quickly. All right. So let's let me get you back to working on, or before we get to the next lab. So you already saw I was starting to do this when I was writing the query off the top of my head, which is that you can aggregate your data. So we've already looked at the select star. So if you select star from transaction, that's a good way to see all of your throughput for all of your applications. But you can do things like min, max, average, things like that. So again, you saw me type in this select max duration from transaction. It's going to show you your slowest transactions for an application. I mentioned before, you can group your data using the facet clause. So again, different from SQL, it's not a group by clause, it's a facet clause. So for example, if I was to select star from transaction and facet by name, which is going to be the URL, well, it's the name of the transaction. You'll see when you run it for your app what that looks like. But so I could facet by name, or I might facet by HTTP response code, or you can facet by whatever attributes you have reporting in. And you're going to see later today, we're going to do some custom attributes. Phil's going to walk you through how to do custom attributes for your FoodMe app. So for example, I think in the example he mentioned earlier, let's say you wanted to see things by a particular product title, who's ordering, the most products. So if you wanted to select a max, or count star and facet by, product type or something, whatever, if you had a custom attribute reporting in for a product type. So that's how you would group your data using a facet. And then you can narrow down your results with a where clause. So you'll see with the queries that we're going to be doing today, we're going to do the where the app name is equal to food me, or if you named your app something different when you were doing your glitch configuration. So for example, I think Phil, yours was Data Nerd Days Food Me. So you would do the where app equal Data Nerd Days Food Me, or you could do a like. You could say like food me. And actually, I was gonna say you don't need a percent. You could just say like food me. Why is it percent food me or asterisk food me? I'm gonna have to test that. I can't remember off the top of my head now. But you can do a like instead of an equal. And then you can, again, HTTP response code not equal to 200. So just the typical types of query type of equals, likes, not equal to, those types of things. You can do an N, you can do all of those types of things in your where clause. All right, so before we get to the next set of labs, we got a couple of labs where I'm going to have you build a couple of different widgets and put them out on your dashboard. Before we get to that, I want you to generate some data in your FoodMe app. So I was following along with Phil as we were going along. So I've got my little FoodMe app over here that I created and this is in my own personal account. So I want you to go out here and just do some orders, place some orders in your FoodMe app so that you can get some data generated so that we're going to use that for our queries that we're going to build. So I'm going to give you 5 minutes to work on that. And I'm going to check the chat to see if there are any questions while you guys are doing that. Oh, Jemiah had a good point about doing multiple queries using nerd graphs. And Rick, yeah, so facet is the same as a group by in SQL. Oh, I see somebody else answered that. Okay. Oh, by the way, I mentioned on the slide that if you've got some folks that you can send the link to your FoodMe app and generate some data from different locations, that would be awesome, because you could maybe facet by country code or a city or some other things that you could facet by. So if you've got if you can share that link with other folks, that'll generate some more data for you as well.
Okay, I figured out why I'm not sending browser data to New Relic.
Why is that?
I turned off the ad blocker in my browser, but I have an ad blocker on my network.
Oh.
So I have to turn that off as well.
Oh. So is it reporting in yet?
Not yet, but I think I've got it. Just about to test. It works really well. I don't see ads.
Well, it's doing its job.
No, well, you know how I solved it, how I diagnosed it is I opened the console in my browser. You know, you go inspect and you see the console. Yeah. And then I loaded the page and it said failed to load resource, connection refused, nrdata.net. So it's when it's trying to post the data up to New Relic, it's refusing to connect.
Gotcha.
All right, so I turned off my network ad blocker. Let's try it again.
Okay, now you got to generate. So now you're doing the lab too. Generate some traffic.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh. Not there yet. Checking the time. Okay. Got a few more. Lawrence is talking about the hacking. He wants absolutely no ads. That's true. Okay, so checking time. Got about 2 more minutes on the generate some traffic in your app. I should get back to my dashboard. Oh, I don't remember what I called it. I should not have navigated away. What did I call it? Was it RLF something or another? Oh, there it is. Wait, no, that's not mine. All right, what did I call my dashboard? Oh, there it is. Ah, or I could just do by created on rather. Of course, to everybody, we've got several people in the same. There it is. That's me. There it is. Okay. All right. Does anybody need more time generating data in their app? Oh, sorry, Douglas. Yeah, I noticed that one. Yeah, I saw the DR at the beginning later. I found mine. Thank you. Does anybody need more time? All right. So let's move on. All right. So before we get into these queries, I just want to say one thing about starting NRQL queries. So I mentioned at the beginning the syntax select from, and then, you know, maybe a where, maybe a facet, and there's more things you can do as well. But actually with NRQL, you can actually start this with a from clause as opposed to the select clause. So you may ask, well, why would I do that? And let me show you, before we get into this lab, let me show you why you might do that. So if you start with a select, I don't know why, there it is. The autocomplete that comes up, I'm about 90% sure this is from the transaction table. Let me look at the data there. Yeah. So the values that come up, the attributes that come up for the select are going to be from the transaction table. But
actually, they'll be from whatever you last queried. So
I didn't know that.
Yeah. So if you did transaction last, you're going to get a list of transaction attributes.
Thank you. Thank you for that, Phil. But the point is, it's going to be from it's going to be from a source that may not be the thing that you plan on selecting from. So maybe I wanted to select from synthetic check. Remember, I mentioned at the beginning of the session that there's all these different event types. So maybe I wanted to select from synthetic check. Well, there's a couple of ways I can do it. I could just skip the select and I could start the from. I know Phil's a fan of this because he doesn't like starting with the from. Is that still accurate, Phil? I think he's got us on mute. But let's say I wanted to select from synthetic chat. That's got a different set of, you may have, I don't know if anybody had a chance to notice all the different things that were in the attribute list previously, but minions was definitely not one of the things that was in the list. Minion is something that is specific to a synthetic check. So this list is now context sensitive to the thing that I'm selecting from. So that's a reason why you might want to start with the from clause. So let's just clear this out. Well, it doesn't want to go away. So I might want to start with page view because I want my select, when I do the autocomplete, to be specific to the attributes that are in page view. So this is a reason that you might want to start with select. Having said that, let me share this link in the chat, which is to our New Relic data dictionary. No, sorry. I hit the wrong thing. Let's go back. I don't know what I hit. Where was I? Was trying to go back to the beginning. There it is. Nope. Where'd it go? Where's our data dictionary? Where'd it go? Did they change this page on me again? That drives me crazy. Oh, we'll come to that in a minute. If you go to docs.newrelic.com, yeah, they changed the page on me. There used to be.
If you go to search at the top.
It used to be on the left side, though, like right on the first page.
I like to search for default events. I don't know if Data Dictionary is going to find it.
Really? Oh, look, it would help if I could spell. How do you spell dictionary? Is that how you spell it? No, that's not going to do it. All right, so we said default events.
Yeah, default events.
It used to be a link on the left-hand side. That's really irritating.
There, the first result, default events reported by New Relic products. And then when you select a product, APM, browser, whatever, it'll take you to a list of event types. And then
do we not have just a data dictionary page
We
anymore?
do. When you click one of those event types, it'll take you to the data dictionary.
Ah. All right, so I'm going to share the link directly to the data dictionary page in the chat, though.
That's got event type transaction in the URL.
Yeah, let me take that out of there. Let's try it without that.
There you go. Yeah, we can write a strongly worded letter to the docs team. Why did you take that?
It used to be on the front page. Okay, so the point that I was going to make was this is the beauty of working for a SaaS company. You know, things change a lot. So the point that I was making is if you're getting new, you know, you're just getting started with writing NRQL and building dashboards, you might want to just go take a look and say, well, I just want to see everything that's out there for, I don't know, my browser agent. And oh wait, there's more than just page view, which is the thing that we're talking about today. There's also page view timing and JavaScript error. And so maybe I want to go see all the attributes that that are available to query for JavaScript error. And I want a description of what each of those things might be. So this is a useful tool. You know, looking at the data dictionary is a useful tool. Another thing that I will point out is when somebody mentioned in the chat that autocomplete is awesome. It is. Another thing that's awesome about it is, I don't even remember what I was about to select. If you hover over one of the attributes you see over to the right, that it's going to give you an explanation of what that thing is. So let's look at something that may not be obvious. Country code is pretty obvious. But the point is, if you hover over it and you're not sure what that thing is, it will explain to you exactly what is being returned in that attribute. If it's one of our default attributes. If it's a custom attribute, you're not going to see that. So if it's something that we're going to do that in the next session. If it's something that you're generating, then you're not going to see that pop up. So anyway, my point here is that if you start with the from clause instead of the select clause, then your autocomplete is going to be context sensitive to the thing that the event type that you're selecting from. So with that, I'm going to take you back over to the lab. I'm doing a time check. Let's say we're going to do about 7 minutes on this. I've got one more lab I want you guys to go through before we run out of time. So just practice writing a couple of queries and adding these to your dashboard. Just real quick, because you should be in your dashboard and you can click on the plus sign to add a new chart. And then that's how you're going to want to add these queries. So just, you know, we give you a hint, you know, we're like select, you know, do a from or a select, whichever order you want to do it in. But you want to get, for example, count all of the transactions from transaction. We already did that one. So maybe you want to skip to 2 and add a facet clause, or maybe, and then in step number 3, we're going to add a where clause. So you're going to add where your app name is. Again, if you named yours Food Me, then you would put food, you would choose Food Me, and you'll see that autocomplete is going to be helpful there as well. So just, I'm going to give it, let's say 6 minutes to practice this, and we'll go on to the next lab as well. So these are going to be your transaction queries, and in the next lab, we're going to do some page view queries. So there's a question in the chat. Is there a way to label each NRQL on the dashboard? I'm actually gonna, because in the interest of time, I was gonna, while you guys are working through the lab, I'm gonna apologize that I'm gonna navigate away from the slide. Here, let me put these. Here's what I'll do. I'll put these. I'd have to exit out of here. Well, I was going to put it in the chat, but I'm going to navigate away from the slide. You guys can continue to follow along because I need to add some stuff to my own dashboard before we go into the next lab anyway. So the answer to the question, and I think that, first of all, a couple of things I want to show you about a dashboard. If I go into edit, which is a little pencil up there at the top, let me do that again because I did that pretty fast. Let me zoom in. There's a little pencil. If I hover over it, it says edit. If I click on that, I can click and drag the tiles around. I can resize them. So maybe my title is just a little bit too big. Okay, now it's too small. So I can resize things. I can click and drag and move them around. So there's a couple things I can do there. Another thing that I can do is I can click on the three little dots here, the ellipsis, and I can say edit. And I can give that tile, that chart, a name. And what was this? This was just page view. It's just a select star, but so I'll just call this page view. And I can save that. So that's how you can put a chart name on there. That's after the fact, but if you want to put one on there at the time that you're creating it, so I'm going to click on add a chart, and I'm going to do the number 2 from the lab, which was, what was I doing? Let's just do number 3. We're going to do max, what are we doing? The max duration for transactions where the application name is food me and I'm grouping by name. So I'm doing max duration from transaction where my app name is equal to food me. Ooh, let's do filled. I just saw his in the list. Let's do fills. Data nerd days food me, and I'm faceting by name. So I'm going to run that. And there's a couple things that I didn't point out previously. So here's where you can put the chart name. This is at the time that you're creating the chart. So this is just going to be the slowest transactions is what I'm going to call this. Move that out of the way. Transactions. So that's where you can put the name, but also you can choose a different chart type. Now, the chart types that are available are going to differ depending on your query. So if I had a line, if I had a time series, that's something that Phil mentioned earlier. It's a special clause in your NRQL statement. If I had something that was a time series that was showing something over time, I could choose line or area or some of the other things. So you'll see that some things are grayed out. It's going to depend on what your query is. For this particular query, I can choose bar or I could choose billboard. Don't love the way that looks. I could just do a table. I could do a pie chart. Well, that's a good looking chart. So I can choose a couple of different types, and then I just click on save, and that's going to add that to my dashboard. See, NRQL statement question. So NRQL is I'm preferring this. I'm pronouncing it NRQL. So like, some people pronounce SQL or SQL. I go back and forth with NRQL versus NRQL. So I apologize. I'm flipping back and forth there, but that's what I mean when I'm saying a NRQL statement.
I like NRQL because it rhymes with Urkel. And then when you make a dashboard, you can say, "Did I do that?"
Oh my God. Okay, so Phil and his dad jokes. Thank you, Phil. That's awesome. Okay, but that's so I can't remember. I'm looking back to the chat who asked the question about naming it was Nezzy. Did I answer your question about how do you label? I think that's what you were asking about, the label. The other thing that you may have been asking, let's say, let's see if I've got another. Let's go back to, I'm going to add a new chart. Another thing you might have been asking when you said label, let's say I wanted average duration, and it's going to do from transaction, whatever. I'm going to show you guys a trick. I'm going to save myself the typing. I'm going to click on recent queries, and I'm just going to pull up one that I ran already. I could actually, let's change this say to, well, I'll leave it at max. I can do an as, which is and I can name this slow, or slowest. So that's another way. So when you ask about how you could label something, I'm not sure which question you were asking there.
One more thing that he may have mentioned, may have meant, if you want to document your charts, when Rachel goes and says add new chart to a dashboard, there's another option there to add markdown. She did a markdown thing. The first widget she added to her chart was formatted text on the left. Yeah. So you can add little widgets to your dashboard that describe the other widgets if you want to make them self-documenting.
And then this is a case where you would probably want to, oops, I didn't mean to hit done too fast, where you might want to resize it and move it around and say, okay, I just want this to go right over the top of this guy, you know. So that's another way. That's what Phil was talking about, that you could, you know, sort of label. So there's a couple of different ways I could interpret that question about labeling. All right, so I think I'm caught up on the questions. Oh, okay. Sorry, I was reading the thing about the Slack channel. All right, I'm actually gonna, because we're almost out of time, I'm gonna skip the page view queries. You can, this is very similar to what we just did on transaction. It's just replacing transaction event type with, you're selecting from page views instead. So just play around with looking at, you know, doing some selects from page views and try a couple of different things. I wanted to get to this last one before we run out of time. We won't have 10 minutes because I think technically the session ends at 10 before the hour. So we're only going to have 3 minutes. But I just want you to try writing some of these advanced queries. This is a case where I'm giving you the words that someone might ask you. So your boss isn't going to come up to you and say, hey, can you select star or select max duration from transaction for me? They're going to say, tell me what the 3 slowest transactions are. Or, you know, they're going to ask you for a pie chart that shows the worst page load times by, you know, by browser. Browser type is called user agent name in that particular in page views. And again, if you hover over the, when you're selecting, because if you start typing browser, you're not going to see that. That's where the data dictionary helps. But I'm letting you know in this slide that it's actually called user agent name. So I just want you to take a few minutes to try to write some of these queries on your own and see if you can think about how you would write them. And what I will say is, because we are going to run out of time, I'll formally end the session in 2 minutes, but for those who want the answer, I will stay for another couple minutes to give you the answers to these questions.
I put a link to a PDF of the slides. So if you want to download a copy of your very own so you can go through these labs later, you can do that.
We got a question about the logo. So it's when you click on the, I'm gonna leave the slide up, so I'm just gonna talk you through this one. So if you click on when you do the plus sign and you've got the choices of add a chart or add text, if you click on that, it shows you the syntax specifically for how you can add an image. It's just like some default text that populates in there, and you'll see the new Relic logo, and that's going to show you. It needs to be a URL and it needs to be publicly available. So there's no way to upload your own image unless you've got it stored on a server somewhere that's public, that's reachable via URL. But that's how you can add that. And hopefully that answered your question, Spiros. And again, I'll show you in like 1 minute, because like, well, I'm going to do the answers to these questions first, and then I'll show you that. And Alan's given us the music. He's playing us off the stage. All right, so technically we are out of time. Okay, so we got some questions about what are the answers to these. So let's do these really quickly. I'm going to give you guys the answers to. So the first one, well, first, this was for the question about how do you do a URL. It's listed here. It's, again, if you do the text, it'll show you there. I'm not going to talk through that one. All right, so let's answer the questions from the lab. So the first question was the 3 slowest transactions. So we already did something similar to this when we did the max duration earlier. So, oops, typing a little bit too fast here. So I'm going to do max duration. So that's going to show me slowest from transaction, where my app name, is equal to, I'm going to use the other FoodMe app because it's probably got more data because it's got synthetic monitors running against it. Now, what I want is I want to do a limit. Oops, can't type today. And I didn't show you this. I just wanted to see if you could figure this one out on your own, just by playing. But because you notice when I started typing, after the FoodMe, it's giving me a couple of different choices of new keywords. And so there's one of in the list is limit, and I'm going to say limit 3. So that's going to give me, well, let's do a list so that I can actually see it. What did I miss? Oh, let's facet. I say that, I don't know if I said that in the lab. And let's make that a table. So if I select max duration from training, I'll put this in the chat for anybody who's still here. If you want to use it in your account, let's put that out there. So if I select the max duration and facet by name and limit 3. So limit is going to give you just the top 3. So, you know, I could do a pie chart where I'm just going to see what percentage of those, and then everything else is going to fall into other. So, and you can actually turn off the other with this visible. You can turn that off so if you don't want to see the other. So that's how you do that one. Okay, you're welcome, Rick. The next one was, what was the question? Compare the unique sessions on your site for the last 5 minutes. Oh, this is, so we're doing a compare with. All right, so this is, so the next question was, I'm going to read it. Compare active unique sessions on your site in the last 5 minutes with the 5 minutes previous. So I'm going to select from page view because we're doing, well, let's do the from. Let's start with the from. From page view. What am I doing? I'm going to count. Session ID. Just count session. And I'm going to do since. We didn't talk about this either. First of all, I need a where clause because I need to narrow this down to my app that I want. Because we've got multiple reporting in this account. I'm going to do since 5 minutes ago. And I'm going to compare that with. Now, here's the trick about the compare with clause. I say 5 minutes ago, again, it seems redundant, but the compare with is the time frame for the compare with is always relative to the since. So technically this part of the statement is comparing it to 10 minutes. So it's like 5 minutes ago, but then compare with 5 minutes before that. I wish you could say before that, but it's actually written as 5 minutes ago. And so what you're going to get is you'll get, in this case, I've got a billboard. I had 150 sessions 5 minutes ago, and that's up almost 1,000% from the 5 minutes prior to that. And I'm checking time. I've got 1 more minute left. Well, 1 more minute to give you guys at least a 5-minute break before the next session, and give Phil a 5-minute break before he has to do. Oh no, I think we're going to lunch after this. Oh no, there's a panel. I'm supposed to pub a panel. We'll talk about that in a second. All right, and then the last one, see if there's any questions about that. The last one was show a pie chart with the worst page loads grouped by browser, city, and country code. So that one, I already gave you sort of the answer to on that one, which was that, let's clear this out, that the catch is that its user agent name is how you select by browser. So I'm doing, so the worst page loads. So from page view, select max duration. What am I doing? Oh, by, okay, yeah. Gotta do my where. Let's steal it because by the time I type it all out, that's still part of this. Well, let's do a max duration here. Anytime I'm trying to type fast, I can't do it. Max duration, where, blah, blah, blah. And then, oh, I wanted to facet by user agent name, which is going to be my browser, city, and country code. I think that was the last one. I'm not looking at the slide again. And let's switch that to a table so it's something that I can read a little bit better. And so those are the answers to those last 3. All right. So with that, We are 5 minutes over time, but I do need to let you know that we have a panel coming up. Join us on the main stage at noon Pacific time for a discussion of the future of open source observability. So that's coming up next.